Assalamualaikum class. Today is lecture number 13 and we are going to start our chapter number 7, that is variable costing, a tool of management. As you all know about variable cost, it is the cost that vary with the units of production. Now, in this chapter we will discuss absorption costing and its comparison with variable costing. The whole chapter based between the comparison of these type of costing. Variable costing, you already aware what is variable cost, that vary with the units of production. As compared to it, what is absorption cost? It is important to know that all manufacturing costs will be treated as product cost, whether they are variable manufacturing cost or fixed manufacturing cost. It means in absorption cost method, we include direct material, direct labor, and both variable as well as fixed manufacturing cost, or we can say manufacturing overhead costs. It means absorption costing method allocates the fixed overhead cost to each unit of product. We will glamorate it in numerical form further. But before doing the numerical calculation or variation, you need to also know what is in variable costing, what type of methods will be used. The main difference between absorption cost and variable cost, that in variable costing all costs will be included except fixed manufacturing cost. Overhead. It means in variable costing we will include direct material cost, direct labor cost, but not both, only variable manufacturing overhead cost. This is the basic difference between absorption cost method and variable costing method. There is exception in both cases. In both costs, the exception is this, that we will take selling and administrative expenses as period cost. With this statement, the question arises in your mind that we call selling and administrative expenses as fixed expenses. So why we are not treated them as product cost, or we are saying that they are period cost? The main reason is this, as we discussed earlier in our earlier chapters, that this cost is not cost that is the part of product, it is the cost that is for the product. But these are very fixed expenses as compared to it. Here the concept of fixed manufacturing overhead cost include factory rent, factory electricity charges, factory overheads, factory vouchers. So these will be the fixed manufacturing overhead costs. That's why we are including them in absorption cost. And as you know that fixed selling and administrative expenses are not included in the product but for the product, so that's why we will call them period cost. As compared to it, these fixed manufacturing overhead costs are included in the product, or they are part of manufacturing of product, so they will be considered as product cost. This type of fixed expense will be considered as period cost, and this type of fixed manufacturing overhead cost will be treated as product cost. Now there is one chart to glamorate all above things, like the costs include raw material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead, fixed manufacturing overhead, raw material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead, fixed manufacturing overhead. All these are really relevant to product cost. And also there is period cost, that you all know what is period cost. All the selling and admin expenses, these are period cost, and all these are product cost. Now, to glamorate the concept of absorption costing method and variable costing method, I want to include raw material inventory, work in process inventory, and finished goods inventory. As you all know, with these type of inventories, we came to get cost of goods and period expenses. Now, the most important thing to understand about the absorption costing method and variable costing method is this, that raw material directly relate to raw material inventory, raw material purchases cost. So work in process inventory, direct labor is there, variable manufacturing overhead is there. Now, from where the concept of fixed manufacturing overhead will come, till here, till this point, it is the variable costing. As we already discussed what is variable costing, all the costs will be included except fixed manufacturing cost. So till here it is variable costing. Now if we include fixed manufacturing overhead, it will become absorption costing. absorption costing. Why? Because in absorption costing, all type of cost, whether they are direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing, fixed manufacturing overhead, so that will become the absorption costing. So if I say absorption costing, after getting all these things, our finished goods will be made in both method. By using both method, variable costing also lead to finished goods inventory, and absorption costing also lead to finished goods inventory. This will give cost of goods, and this fact also include the period expenses. If we are making income statement by using the variable costing method, the variable costing method will include period expenses, as well as the absorption costing method will also include the period expenses. And finally, when we are calculating the income statement, we are making the income statement, selling and administrative expenses will also be the part of period expenses. The basic and the main difference in making income statement is this: income statement will be made with two methods. One is absorption costing method, second is variable costing method. Like, if we are making income statement and cost of goods sold, we will get these three figures, and fixed manufacturing overhead will become the part of period expense. As compared to it, if we are calculating the absorption cost, then this fixed manufacturing overhead will also become the part of cost of goods sold, and the period expenses will only include the selling expenses. I am repeating that in variable costing income statement preparation, we will include raw material as direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overhead. And these two costs will become the part of period expenses. This is variable costing. Now, if we are discussing about absorption costing income statement, what we will do? We will include direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead, fixed manufacturing overhead as the part of cost of goods sold, and only selling and admin expenses will become the part of period expenses. This is the basic difference between the absorption costing method and variable costing method. That variable costing does not include fixed manufacturing cost overhead as cost of goods sold.